Hi everybody and welcome back to the Crafty Yellow Camper, and today we're going to be using the Mountain Air stamp set. Comes with a set of dies as well, and this one is special because it has reversible images. So I don't know if you can see on the stamp set there are the darker images, which is actually the detail, and then there are these paler grey images that show up, which are basically the reverse of the stamp. So you can stamp on both sides to get a shadow effect. You can use that with or without the side with the detail. Okay, so let's get started. So I've gone ahead and cut some of the elements that we're going to need to make this card, just to speed things up a little bit. My base is half of an A4 sheet in the UK, or half of whatever size sheet your paper comes in, scored and folded in half. And on the front, I have used a white matte layer, just Whisper White matte layer, and I've gone ahead and stamped on here so you can see what I mean about the different images. So this image here at the back is the back of the mountain range stamp, so that's got no detail, that just gives a shadow effect. And then this image here is the front of the mountain range stamp. Now I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that there's a little bit here that hasn't stamped properly, and that's because these stamps were new and I hadn't conditioned them before I used them. So just a quick tip, you can either stamp them in Versamark, which is the clear tacky glue, and then clean them off and stamp them, or you can use a Tombow sand rubber, mono sand rubber, over the surface first and then clean it off. I use surgical spirit or rubbing alcohol just to make sure I've got all the residue off, and that just makes sure that the residue from the stamps being made is removed. The other thing that I wanted to say as a quick tip today as well is that these are photopolymer stamps because they're double-sided, and that really does necessitate, if you're not using it in your Stamparatas, to use a stamping mat underneath. And our piercing mat, which you can buy in the annual catalogue, works just as well. It just gives a little bit of give rather than stamping on a hard desk. Okay, you can also see that I've just used the cloud here, just used the back of that stamp. I haven't put the detail in. If you look on the stamp set, the detail of the cloud is sort of puffy, and I just wanted to give an illusion of there being a bit of cloud in the sky. So I have stamped and then stuck on with snail on my white layer onto the card, and we're going to layer this up to give this a little bit more dimension. So again, I've gone ahead and I've stamped and die cut the mountain range, which I've got here. Now I stamped the background in using the back of the stamp to give the shadow effect in soft suede, and then I went over it to put the detail in with the early espresso. Now you'll notice when you come to die cut it that you'll be cutting off some of the shadow shape. It fits over the mountain range rather than the shadow shape, but you still get that fill in on the detail that I wanted to get. And then I've also gone ahead and I've stamped the line of trees. Now maybe I'm being special, hopefully I'm not, but I could not make that line up. So I think the idea is that it's not really meant to line up. So you can see a little bit of shadow behind it. I think it looks fine, and I haven't taken away the scrap edge here because that's going to be hidden by the front of the card. Okay, I've also stamped and die cut the two trees that are together, and those are done in shaded spruce. For this one I used Mossy Meadow for the shadow effect, and then shaded spruce on top. And then I've also die cut a tree from shaded spruce, and these trees have lots and lots of detail on them. You get two in the pack. From what I can see, they're both the same, which means that you can die cut two at a time, which is quite useful. They do need to be pricked out afterwards, or you need to use a die brush on them to get all the fiddly little bits and pieces out. Okay, so let's get started. I'm just going to clear those bits off my desk. Okay, so we've got our base here. Now what we're going to do is make this layer up. So on the back of the mountains, I have just put 3 mini dimensionals, and that will be enough for the layer that I want to put on. And I'm just going to put that over the front of my card. Now I'm making sure to stay inside this white matte layer, and you'll see why in a minute. And then on top of that, we're going to have our trees. Now don't worry about this tatty bit down here. You can trim it off if you want to, but I'm going to leave it there because we're not going to see it. So on the back of this, I've done exactly the same as the mountains, and I have put 3 dimensionals, but we want this to be raised up a little bit more. I'm just going to move that card to one side so you can hopefully see what I'm doing. So on top of the dimensionals that I've already stuck down, here they are. I knew I'd got them out ready, but I couldn't see them. I'm going to stick another dimensional. So we're going to layer up 2 dimensionals, one on top of the other. Doesn't matter if they're not perfectly lined up, but do the best you can to get them lined up. And then we're going to take the tops off those. So on this layer, we've got 2 dimensionals, one on top of the other. On the first layer, we had 1 layer of dimensionals. I'm going to bring our card back, and we're going to fit this in over the mountains, but remembering not to go over the bottom line of the mat. And then over the top of all of that, we're going to put a frame to give us some height. Now I've used large dimensionals on this, and again I have stuck 1 on, but we are going to go and layer this right up. Okay, so I think this is probably a card that's best hand delivered. I don't know that the Postal Service's machinery would like several layers of dimensionals. So I'm going to put another dimensional onto each corner where I've put these ones. And just for a little bit of extra support, we're going to put a couple in the middle so it doesn't sag. So let's just take the backends off those. Just merrily chucking the backends sideways. I'll be finding them for weeks all over the floor, in my clothes. Don't know what it is about dimensional backends, but they seem to go everywhere. Right, what we're going to do, we're going to offer this up to the front of the card and see if we want to have a 3rd layer of dimensionals on. But I think that that is going to be okay. So we're just going to peel the tops off. Now, I don't know if you've heard me say before, with these bigger dimensionals, sometimes they can be a nightmare to get the backends off. So if you push your, sorry, I'm out of screen, push your thumbnail in to the middle like that, it helps lift off. As you can see, it's just lifted the edge of that really nicely. I've got thumbnails, so it's easy to flick them off, but if you've got short nails, it can sometimes be a bit fiddly. Okay, so I think we've got those all off. Yep, sticking to them all. Okay, so we're going to bring our card back in, just making sure you can see what I'm doing. Now you might get a bit of my head in the shot because I need to make sure to line this up. So we need to make sure that we line up the frame so that we completely cover the white layer. And I can see there that mine has slipped a little bit, so I'm just going to go back in. Now, if you're really careful with dimensionals, you can pull them back off. This would be the card with 60 million dimensionals on it, wouldn't it? Okay, so if you just take it slowly and carefully, you should be able to persuade it off without ripping the cardstock underneath. Oh, that one's gone a bit, but that's fine because we're going to move that up. Right, so let's have another go. Please excuse me if my head is in the way. Check it's all the way around covered. Yep, I think we're good this time. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so there we go. So that's our card, and you can see there's quite a bit of height to that. It's not quite a diorama card, but we're not far off. Okay, and then we're just going to use these last few trees that we've cut. Now, obviously, you can't put a dimensionals behind that tree. There's absolutely no way you could hide them. If you did want to make life easier and not have to put glue on the back of it, because there's not a lot of places where you can, you could die cut it on one of our double-sided adhesive sheets, which are available in the main catalogue, and that way you would effectively turn it into a sticker. I forgot to do that, so I'm going to just put a little tiny bit of Tombow in the places where there is more cardstock. Just need a few bits, hopefully that's going to do it. And then we're going to stick this to one side, and hopefully I've got the glue in the right place. Now you might get a little bit of squidge, but don't worry, that will come off. It dries clear, but it will come off with the glue rubber. And then this one is just going to be mounted up with just the one layer, because I think we've got enough height on this card as it is. The one layer of dimensionals, and I'm just using the mini ones because they were what I grabbed first, but it doesn't really matter what size you put on. Or you could go mad and put a mixture of both sizes on. Okay, there we go. And then this one is going to go on that side there. There we go. And that is our finished card. You could put a greeting along here if you wanted to, or equally a thin greeting along at the top. I like to leave my cards without greetings so that I can personalise them when I do want to send it. So hopefully you that's all made sense, and I'll see you again soon. Happy stamping!